Andrew, how about if you introduce yourself and take on the presentation?
Okie dokie. So I'm Andrew. I have been in and out of startups. I know it sounds like prison, right? I've been in and out of startups my most of my adult life. I have been one of those people who likes to run with scissors and try to figure out what works and what doesn't. And one of the things that I identified after putting down one of my last startups was, which was an aerial drone company, was a lot of fun. We had a lot of success with it. We targeted real estate, and I realized that one of the major things missing from any marketing structure for startups was marketing structure. So I decided to go full headlong into marketing, and I've been doing that independently for quite a while. I worked with a couple of clients of John's in the past, and then now I am doing it as a full-blown marketing firm. So we have hired out the people for the individual disciplines. We have a team of 7 of us now, 8 of us, and yeah. So now we're running with scissors in a whole new direction. And I'd love to actually cover some of these questions while it's fresh on my mind, if that's okay.
You're the leader.
Cool. Okay. Yeah. So you have the sales funnel with an email sequence in room 4. Could somebody elaborate on that?
I think that was me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I'm a startup of 1 person.
Okay.
So I have to super, leverage all outside stuff that's already done these things for me, because I have to spread my time around a lot. So I came across ClickFunnels, which I don't know if you guys know about, but I love it. It's like my Trojan horse. It's again, I haven't started yet, but I'm just about to. And the idea is you go out there and find your groups of your people. And so in my case, investments for institutions, so financial advisors and pension fund managers and family offices and people like that, and find them out there, and then you build an email base of them, and then you just continue to offer them more stuff up the ladder of higher value. So, you get their email and you offer them like a webinar or a little manual or something for $5 or $3, and now they're paying for you to advertise, basically. So for every dollar you put in, you get like $20 back if you do it right. And then you go, now I have really my site as a website that offers a tool for them to figure out valuation of stock. So my next thing would then be, so I'll offer them the manual and maybe a webinar. And then I'm going to do a newsletter monthly.
Step in a little bit. You're sort of walking through the details of what's going on. He's going to cover a lot of this stuff in the talk. What's the question or barrier that got brought up that he can address?
Oh, okay. Well, it wasn't mine, but I'm going to say his name wrong, but Isif, I think. Anyway, he was talking about who you market to and who you stay away from. And he didn't say much about it, so I'm thinking maybe there's a time suck on people who lead you astray and aren't really interested or something along those lines. So, but in my case, once they start buying stuff, I know they're interested. So,
okay. Was there an inherent question you had with that, or is that?
I guess not.
Okay. All right. Okay. So we have a website with capture page. I guess that's kind of similar to your sales funnel with an email sequence,
right,
and then to a landing page where it says, "Hey, download this in exchange for your email."
Yep.
And then once you get that email, you have permission to market to them.
So I don't know if there are any pitfalls doing that, but that's what I basing my whole marketing plan on.
Yeah, yeah. So in room 5, which was a discussion with myself, Sarah, and Patrick, I believe. We had kind of covered some of what Sarah was doing, and I wrote down, what's in it for me? Offering has to be for both ends of the agreement. How do you communicate the value proposition? So it's easy to say that there is a corporate social responsibility for a company that you're working with, or a type of client that you're targeting, but there always has to be something beyond the corporate social responsibility, right? Like, okay, yes, if I do this, what do I get out of it? Do I get like in this case, do I get like a decal for my boat as we practice safe fishing standards? Do I get, you know, like a merit badge or an award once a year? Is there some kind of like, is there something in it that I get that makes me feel valuable as a part of that? And that's always really important. Let's see, room one, persona development, business to business and business to both our customer segments, content scaling. So I wrote down further, how do you pander to multiple audiences, different platforms, segmented groups? I believe that was Austin, is that right? Or was that?
Which one? The room one?
Room,
One.
yeah, room one.
Yeah. That came from Michelle. So I wrote this one up.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
she
I mean,
can
like-
elaborate more. But I think you're right. It's basically on the same platform. You have two different types of audience. You're marketing.
If it's on the same platform and you have two audiences, there are a couple different ways to tackle that problem. Sometimes you want to create two pages or two platforms or two accounts, and that can be tricky. But also you can change your branding. So you can say like, you know, for businesses or for clients or for customers, and you can put out specific branded looking imagery for either one to kind of prompt you like, oh, that is for me or this is not for me. And that's a good way to segment that. Content scaling, maintaining brand voice, look and feel. Anil, this is an incredible barrier for literally any company we've ever worked with. Maintaining the actual branding for any company when you're producing content is a disaster in most cases. And it's usually in the vetting process for the hiring that you get that straightened out. We spend hours and hours reviewing candidates for positions to place with companies to make sure that they match the brand and the voice for that company. Otherwise it takes, you know, 20 or 30 hours of practice to get there in some cases. Ibrahim actually has been working for one of our clients for 5 months now, and they have literally disapproved of every piece of content at one point in time or another for their company. And it's just getting to the point where they're like, oh yeah, we like that. It's like, okay, perfect. We just had to figure out which person and what department was reading it and approving it to pander it to them. So that's a tricky one. I'd say it's really in your vetting process. You want to find somebody who matches the look and feel that you're going for.
Yep. And that's the biggest challenge I have, is because, you know, that's come in the way of scaling. I find the right person, find the right tone, right message. And then do you recommend at this point saying, hey, every piece of content has to be then reviewed by me? Or you just say, hey, in your experience, when you have worked with these folks and you find the right match, you say, let that person go and do it. Because that's another challenge, right?
Yeah, one of the options is to just let them own their content. So say like, hey, if you're going to post content, cite it as you, as a person who works for this corporation or entity.
Okay.
Say like, you know, you are a proficient expert in this genre or this discipline of this company. And as long as they take ownership of it, then you don't have to worry about it being as close to the brand image. But if you're posting things as like this disembodied entity, which I do a lot and I recommend not doing to most of my clients, but I think that it's healthy to say, this is not my content, this is somebody else's content, and let's let them just take ownership of it. And you're still gonna, you know, you're still paying them for the resource, they're still getting experience. And over time, you might be able to assist with helping them adjust it more to the brand message. Otherwise, you need a very strict branding outline for them to be able to say like, here, follow these guidelines, don't deviate.
Okay. And what about
that? I would like to take our Q&A that's happening at the beginning and put it back to the end of the conversation so that we can actually have the presentation. Otherwise, we'll run out of time.
All
so
right,
Andrew,
sounds good.
Do the slides and then we'll restart this conversation.
Sure, give me a second to get it up here. All right, so we went far too in depth the first one, so we made a second presentation for you guys. All right, so content marketing, a brand's love language. So I thought this was kind of a cliche. I don't know if any of you follow many marketing personas out there in the world, but the one that I like to follow is Seth Godin. He's got some incredible content. Are you guys still seeing the slideshow here? Yeah, perfect. Okay. So anyways, so Seth Godin says that marketing is like dating, right? Like you don't just, you're not just gonna go try to propose to the first person who's willing to even look at your brand. You know, you want to make sure that they're right for the brand. You want to make sure that the brand's right for them. It's like dating. Anyways, okay, so content marketing, a brand's love language, presented by Andrew Beavers and
Caitlin DeBoer.
And let's click on the right screen. There we go. Okay, so things to consider. How do you market to an audience if you don't know who they are? Focused on the product instead of an audience? Are you solving a problem? What makes your brand special? How can you measure success? How do you keep them coming back for more? So these are all very important aspects of like where you guys are at right now. A lot of you probably have some type of product developed. Maybe some of you have a few customers. Maybe some of you have a couple people who are interested at least in an idea. I mean, wherever you're at, these are all valuable things to think about in the early stages because your branding going forward matters a lot. Overview, the customer life cycle. What is content marketing? Focus on the audience, tips before you get started, recommended books and resources. So these are some of the things that are going to be in this presentation. So the first thing we have here is the customer life cycle, or R, marketing for pirates. I'm not, you guys can raise your hands if you've seen this before. Anybody? Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so we've got a good group of people who have seen it before. So acquisition, gaining attention of users. So obvious, that's kind of obvious. It's like, you know, where are you finding them? What are you doing to bring them in to look at you? The next thing is activation. You're turning a user into a customer. What's making them want to buy, right? So these are all different metrics, and each one of these are probably a book of information underneath it. Retention, keeping your customers coming back for more. Referral, customers share your product or services. Then revenue, profit, profit, profit. The revenue portion of this, that's all on you. Pretty much everything else I can kind of assist in. But so what is content marketing? Anybody have any ideas? No?
Use
Okay.
content as a magnet.
Yeah, absolutely. The process of creating and distributing materials, usually online, to stimulate interest in a brand. This includes blogs, videos, and social media posts. So at the bottom here, we have a raw test on our own company. We put out a blog strategy on our own website. We didn't change any other thing about our company. We just wanted to test this one metric. And you can see we started it about July, mid-July. We put out one article. At the end of July, we put out another article, and you see a compounding jump there. And then in August, we did one a week until mid-November. And you can see what happens when we stopped in November entirely. We wrote out that curve a little bit, and then it dropped, and then it kept going. So if I matched up the clicks to this, you guys would see the clicks increase in around September and then continue all the way through. So the clicks never changed. So we're still getting valuable click-throughs based on the content that was produced. But this kind of gives you an idea. This is, by the way, this is 1.1 million views on Google search during this time period. So it's content is very valuable. And if you're producing it often, you will show up more often. So I don't know how many people know the story of John Deere's magazine, The Furrow, but you want to?
Sure. John Deere in, I think it was 1895, so over 100 years ago, they started their own magazine. They started their own magazine and people started buying it. It was a very valuable marketing tactic for them. They still do it today. They ended up with like 5 million viewers at their peak, and they really established themselves as an authority in the farming industry, something that everybody wanted to read it. Everybody was buying these magazines and really staying with the John Deere brand and eventually buying their products.
Yeah, so John Deere is a really interesting story. The owner of the magazine said it was, or the person who manages the magazine today said that it's interesting because they're still producing more print copies than they are getting digital hits on the magazine. So if that kind of puts into perspective how ingrained it is in these people that you have to have the magazine, because that's that's what it is to you. So that's part of the branding for this.
People are even still buying their old and antiquated copies out of their archives because they just love the brand.
All right, so are you forgetting the audience? You can make and post content all day long, but if it isn't attracting the right people, you're wasting time. So focus on making content for the audience, not you. So this is the other issue with that client we were talking about that Ibrahim writes for. They're trying to make content for themselves, not their demographic. And so it's a little off. It's interesting to try to combat, but we don't. We just we will tell them and guide them, but we can't tell them they're wrong.
Yeah, it's really interesting. They're trying to be the expert, and they're talking to other experts in their industry through their content, where really they want to be talking to their customer that they're trying to draw in, not the person that's already interested in their industry and knows all about it.
So defining your customer. Make a customer persona. This includes demographic data like gender, age, geographical location, etc. This can even include metrics such as lifestyle choices, habits, family structure, and job title. So we literally mean sit down and pretend you know this person on a first name basis and write them down, right? Like find an image on Google that matches this character that you're talking about. Give them a job, give them give them everything. What do they do on the weekend? What's their family like? What kind of, how much do they make per year? Everything you can think of. Fill out a customer persona, make a person, and pretend that that's the person that you're talking to every time you try to market.
So you don't have the word psychographic in there, and Patrick's going to talk about psychographic choices next week, and
Perfect.
so we'll dive into this a little bit more next week.
Even better. So address the problems of your audience. By the way, this frog, his name is Elliot. We decided to name him for you guys. Provide relevant information. Within your industry and scope of expertise, your content should address the audience's worries, problems, common misconceptions or myths, interests, and their hopes and dreams. So this literally means that this last part here where you're defining the persona of your customer, you're actually going to go in and write down, what are they worried about? Like what problems do they have on a daily basis? Does Chad with the man bun worry about what flavor his coffee is? Absolutely. He's really worried about that. What else is he worried about? I don't know. Maybe how high his high waters are. Who really knows? But that's not for me to decide. That's for whoever is building that persona. Is your content remarkable? This one John's going to love, I'm sure. When content is remarkable, it inspires users to talk about your brand. Word of mouth marketing is an invaluable type of organic interaction that drives a brand's awareness through its product, service, or brand message. So think about how you're using the word remarkable. Like, oh, that's remarkable. But like, really? Are you talking about it all the time? Because if you're making remarks about it, it is remarkable. Your content should be remarkable. Otherwise, there's no reason to share it.
And word of mouth marketing is probably one of the most important things to your brand. It's literally free marketing. Once you've gotten the one person that can't stop talking about you, they're going to go and tell all their friends, and their peer reviews are much more important to a user than anything else. If they could skip going online and searching all of this for a service provider or a contractor or a dentist, they can just get a recommendation from their friend. They're just going to go with the recommendation from their friend. It's tried and true. Just go with them.
Yeah, peer reviewed is always the best way to go. All right, let me see if I have anything else to say about this. Do you have something to say, John? Or
No, I was just answering Neil, who said he has a video about building and measuring analytics to find you defining a persona.
Oh, that's what I was going to say. So a lot of the times you're not going to be able to retain information like your word of mouth marketing. You're not going to find out who talked about your company and why they decided to sign up for it. But you can put out surveys and information like that. Then you can hand it off to a data analyst like Anil here and kind of figure out what's going on.
If you can get influencers to talk about you can track that at least.
Yeah, with links and UTMs and so on and so forth. So targeting your customers, find the ideal channels for your content and throw passion behind your efforts. Produce every piece of content with your ideal customer in mind. Ask questions like, where do my customers hang out online? Is my content visual? Is my content written? What kind of content is likely to not only attract my audience, but make them want to share my content with others? So that's part of the word of mouth marketing. But what this really comes down to is, are you marketing like software to Instagram? Like, if you're gonna sell like a code camp, are you gonna advertise on Instagram or maybe Tumblr? These channels don't work as well as you'd think, but there is definitely a demographic there. It's really back down to whatever platform you're most comfortable with. And I say that loosely because obviously you're not going to find every demographic in every platform, but it's very important to use something that you are comfortable with, something that you will produce content on, a system that you already enjoy and already understand.
And if you don't enjoy any of them, then you need to hire somebody who does, because if you're not passionate about it, you're not going to be doing a successful job with it.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and there are different types of platforms, different types of content. You know, is my content visual? So are you posting it in a place that's visually appealing, like Instagram, or, you know, even Tumblr to an extent? Is my content written? It's like, okay, so are you going to put it on Reddit? Are you going to put it on, you know, some kind of forum? Are you going to go find independent blogs that you can talk about it on? You know, you have to really consider where your audience is hanging out, what type of interactions these people have, and it comes back to that persona development. So now that you have them right where you want them, it's time to kiss. So we've got a couple of books here that we're going to recommend for people. Did anybody get these last two slides? No? Okay. All right. Recommended books and resources. I'm actually going to talk about these a little bit, and then I think I'll roll back through the slideshow for you guys so that if anybody has questions along the way, we can Q&A on each slide. So recommended books and resources: Inbound Marketing, Get Found Using Google, Social Media, and Blogs by Brian Halligan and Dharmesh Shah. So I guarantee you may not know their names or who they are, but these are the guys who started HubSpot. And they started about 100 other marketing tools that you probably use before they hit on HubSpot and made millions of dollars and got a ton of backing. These guys are expletive deleted geniuses. I can't beat myself right now. So they're geniuses. They just produce and produce and produce and produce and produce until they hit something that wins. And then they roll with all the data. They produce literature on it so they can teach other people. They teach courses on it. They even have a free inbound marketing course that Ibrahim and I are in love with. We love everything about their inbound marketing. If anybody here doesn't understand inbound marketing, that's the act of putting out content to drive people into you. And then when you get to the next step, you get to permission marketing. And permission marketing is the next book in line here by Seth Godin. I'm sure a lot of you know who Seth Godin is. If you don't, look him up, it'll change your life. Seth Godin is a marketing guru. I believe this is his very first book. A lot of people talk about The Purple Cow. I'm sure a lot of people have read that. Permission Marketing is by far my favorite book by him, where he does explain, like, you know, marketing is like dating. You're not trying to climb into bed right away. That's towards the end. You want to get married first. I mean, according to Seth Godin. But anyways, so Seth Godin has an incredible outlook on permission marketing. And this is where you're not trying to sell people ads. You're not going door to door. That stuff doesn't work anymore. When somebody comes to your door to try to sell something, you're disenfranchised before you even open the door. You already know inside that you don't want that product because they came to your door and knocked. They had to come interrupt you and bother you to try to buy the product. I mean, even the Girl Scouts stopped doing it, right? So the next one is Bold: How to Go Big, Create Wealth, and Impact the World by Peter H. Diamandis and Stephen Kotler. So this book is highly inspirational if you guys are having trouble figuring out why you want to do what you're wanting to do, if you're struggling with whether or not people are going to like your idea or what you have to put behind it. This is a great book to like help you inspire a message for whatever you're doing. And then Return on Sustainability: How Businesses Can Increase Profitability and Address Climate Change in an Uncertain Economy. So I don't know if anybody has been watching the stock market recently. I'm sure most of you are not at work right now. This book was actually produced in 2009, right after the worst part of the recession and during the recovery phase. And he went around and made a fortune by optimizing large companies to be more sustainable, to help them ride through this wave of sustainability need, plus the curvature of the economy at the time. It is a fantastic book. Sarah, I would highly recommend it for you. He talks a lot about, you know, like the value proposition to people, and, you know, like really why these people bought from him. Like, why did Sony spend $1.8 million on his consulting? Like, that's a good question, especially during the middle of a recession. So anyways, and then we have the thank you for listening page. I'll put this up at the end, but right now we can do Q&A, but I want to go through this and do Q&A. All right, I'm ready.
So I'd like to sort of step back into the recipe that Linda was walking through and sort of describe in the context of marketing as a whole what she was doing. Linda, you want to describe what you were doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm here. So he touched on a lot of it, which so it's just about finding your audience, which he talked about, and I don't know if permission marketing is like getting them to give you their email or whatever, so that you can then market them on a stair step upwards of more expensive stuff. But obviously you have to make it something they want, and I love the, you know, the whole thing about having them share it with each other, because that's awesome. Then it goes viral. Anyway, that's where I am.
Yeah, I think I don't know how much the definition of virality has changed, but I think it was, if it has more than 10,000 interactions in a 24-hour period, it's technically viral. So
I want that.
it doesn't take much. I think I have a record. I'm not bragging, but I'm gonna brag.
All right. How do we go viral? How do I do that?
7.2 million views in 48 hours.
Oh my gosh. Give me that.
Well, so let's dive into Linda's, oh my God, I have to have that feeling.
Yeah.
Here's Linda with an idea, sort of a website, and she's wanting to hit the scale button.
Yep.
But she's not ready for scale because she hasn't really tuned her process. So the cost of customer acquisition is a function of your conversion rate. And so if you get this hugely viral thing, and the consequence of that is a low conversion rate, or maybe even a negative conversion rate, so that you've been labeled as someone who's funny but not serious, and now they don't click and they tell all their friends not to click because it's a scam or whatever, but it's fun to watch the cat video, then you've done your business a disservice.
Yeah.
And so in the beginning, there's a bunch of tuning about where you're creating value, how you're creating value, how that value then converts, or the message converts to people actually engaging as customers.
Mm-hmm.
And so hitting the viral scale button is useless if you have not found the match between your customer base and the value proposition.
Yeah, and not all content is going to drive sales. Like I've got some stuff right now that's going on. I showed John yesterday, but you know, we've had I think it was I'm trying to figure out the number exactly. It went from a 3,000% increase in clicks from Google in the past week on one of our brands. Not a single sale. And the reason for that is because of the content that's attracting people. So the content that's going to attract people isn't always the content that's going to sell people. It sounds like what you're doing is probably on par to keep going at the rate you're going. Like, you know, offering them something value, they come in and they set up the process, and there's a return on it. In order to scale that, you're going to need to harvest a lot of data, you know, identify the customers, you know, try to increase that.
Yeah, I'll share a story here about the content marketing pieces, and you know, there was one organization local in Seattle that I was working with. It's a medical facility or hospital.
You have a lot of echo. Can you sit closer?
Yeah. Oh, my mic is out of the way here. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, so I was sharing my story about this healthcare organization that I was working with, and around this content marketing and really, going out in social media and really positioning themselves and talking about sharing all their content and stuff. So what their social media marketing person started doing is started speaking a lot of social media conferences, right? Because they're definitely invited, hey, you're doing this, you're doing that. Turns out they had a huge Twitter follower, and we looked at Twitter and Facebook at that point, and Twitter followers, and their growth was exponential, like, it's growing. And so in all, it looked like, hey, it's driving, and that's what we want to do. We have a lot of following going on. But when we started digging into, and this is where the data comes into play, who are we attracting? What kind of interactions we are having? We started seeing that they were attracting a lot of other social media managers, not even from here, all around the world, because they wanted to follow and see what these guys were doing, which was not their audience. So as you are growing these and you're positioning your content and speaking about it, that's something to look at and say, are we attracting the right audience? Is this the one that's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck? Having social media managers and directors from all over the world is not going to help, because they needed local patients. So that's something to always look at. Look at the data. Where is this leading? Not only like how many likes or how many shares or how many views we are getting, but downstream, and are we attracting the right audience?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And this goes from biggest problem, I think Andrew, you touched on this, is which is figuring out who you're targeting and then coming up with the metrics. How are you going to measure? Because after the fact, and this is the problem I see all the time, after the fact, you can spin it in any way you want. But we got so many shares. But was that the point? So define your metrics and hold yourself accountable for those metrics. Are those metrics really tied to your business outcome?
A lot of that starts with just your general analytics tracking. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Data is, as much as I love the idea of content marketing is more of a science than people let on. It's exactly. Like, oh, you can produce feel good stuff all day long, but is it really making a difference? Check the metrics. Sometimes it's not what we think it is.
And always have your metrics set up the first time.
Yeah, defining metrics is one of the things, people miss all the time, which is like, what are you trying to drive? And usually, they'll come up with lots of measures. Oh, shares, likes, visits, this, that, conversions. I'm like, pick one, because you can get lots of visits and not conversions. If conversions is the one, you might not get so many shares and likes. What is that one that you're not willing to let go because that's tied to your business objective? And that's the hardest part, coming up with that one metric. And there are several books. I think Lean Analytics talks about that. And there is I think they call it one metric that matters, generally in any scenario, whether you're building a feature, whether it's a piece of content, whether it's your ads on Google. What is that one metric that you really care about? And it takes days to actually think.
At the beginning, everybody says, I have an idea, I need sales. And then the whole reason that we have R in the conversation, the reason Dave McClure put that together is to help us identify the inflection points along that customer journey. So in the very beginning, I got to get people's attention. If I don't have their attention, I can't do other things, right? Yeah. And so my key metric is going to shift as I move down the process.
Exactly. Yep.
Right.
Yep. It changes, but for that particular action that you're doing, what is the metric? Then it changes, like you're saying. You are at this point, now the metric will change. Then you have to go move forward, metric will change. But define that upfront so you know what you're driving towards.
John, I'm sorry. The connection was a little bit shaky. I don't know what I didn't catch you. Were you saying you set a metric for each point in the R process?
Yes. So if you're at your goal is to have a cascade through all of those steps. And so you want to measure at the beginning, how many people am I getting their attention? And then how many people am I getting to commit to engage with me, and then how many people are returning to engage again. And so as I walk through that, I should be able to plot that cascade. And if I have high conversion rates for the beginning and then a very low conversion rate for the end, like for conversion to sale, then that's the place where I need to be working the experiment to move the conversion rate up, right? So in some way, I'm trying to move a needle. What needle am I trying to move today?
Yeah, so you're not saying you have one metric at a time. You're saying you have one metric at a time, one metric per stage of the funnel.
Or one metric that you're currently focused on with the current experiment.
Okay, fair enough.
So Danny wants to know about multiple customer segments. How do you manage that?
Give me 1 second here. I'm researching.
Yeah, that's your different personas, right?
Well, personas might be in the same,
Within those two, yes.
right? So, you know, if I have Danny's problem is he's got a two-sided market, right? Fundamentally different organizations. So there are people that want to listen to music. There are people that want to deal with the venues and managing the venue process, and people that want to play music at those venues. So how does he market to all three of those segments?
You're saying for your live product, you're trying to segment audiences by on one platform.
Yeah, so I guess my platform specifically, we have a music event discovery platform, but we also provide artist services so they can be featured on our platform if they want to, and use like websites. So it's cool because we've been building like a community of people that like to go out and see shows. So we need to build that market, but we also want more people to know that this market exists and this platform exists so they can utilize it and put more content in it.
Okay, so I'm trying to wrap my head around the idea. So it's kind of an idea where you're building out a community around, and your general audience is the actual group of bands themselves.
The general audience are people that go to shows, and some of those may be musicians, but having them know, oh, this is a platform, one, that I can go and find shows as a fan, but then also letting them know as a musician, if you're that musician, that you could be utilizing the service to post your shows.
The providers and the consumers, basically.
Yeah, where's your typical medium? Like, are you using Facebook or Twitter, Instagram?
I'd say mostly Instagram is where our biggest following is, just because we post a lot about shows that are happening. And then occasionally we may talk about some of the artist services that we're doing. But people will try to fit them together, but it just doesn't seem as cohesive. I know if we were doing like advertisements, then we could segment like people that are in bands versus people that go to concerts. But like if it's traditionally like our marketing message and branding, like should we just focus on fans? That's what most people would be.
What's your channel again on Instagram? Your Instagram channel.
Showground Seattle.
So I didn't get the question. Is your question like who should we mainly target, or and you're saying?
I mean, ideally we could target both, but we don't want to, like, if I'm posting on Instagram and one post is about targeted toward people who want to go to shows, and then another post is like, oh, are you an artist? Like, is that okay? Like sending that out to everybody, because not everybody that's following me would be an artist. I don't know. It's
yeah. I mean, that's a tough one. I mean, like, that's a tough one to talk, because
unless we had like a Showground artists and then like a Showground fans type of channel, maybe that's the best way to do it. Like Showground Seattle versus Showground like artists.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I was gonna suggest. Is that might be the way, because then you have tailored content for both those channels.
But then you have a lot of content that, I mean, on this channel is mostly content regarding the bands, right?
Well, it's content regarding shows that are happening that day, usually day of. So it's kind of like here are a few shows that are happening today, or you can just jump on our platform and see all the shows, kind of thing. Obviously, there are no
Okay.
shows happening right now, so there's not been a lot of new content.
So I see well, this could be part of why you're not. I think that the way you're doing it is fine, actually. By looking at the content, I think one of the major issues is you haven't hashtagged the actual bands.
No, they're tagged in the photos.
Yeah. So I don't know if you're familiar with like scaling aggregated content, but where you start low, you say you have like 10 people following one hashtag. If you post something in a hashtag that's not often used, it's more likely to be seen by a larger audience of those 10 people than a hashtag that has like 10 million followers, right?
Okay.
So then as you have some kind of interaction rate with those 10 users, then you target another hashtag that has maybe 100 users, and then another hashtag that has 500, and then another hashtag that has 1,000. And so as you climb these rankings of how often they're used, you can get up to the million points, sure. But the whole point is to scale through them so that way the people who are least likely to see these big hashtags are more likely to see these smaller ones. And then as they start to see them in conjunction with one another, they'll show up more often in their newsfeed.
So you use like the band's hashtags, like you just hashtag the band. So if anybody is
hashtag the band, yeah.
Okay.
Well, here, let's check it out real quick here. It's hashtag. So we'll just do Glacier Metal as an example. Hashtag Glacier Metal has 81 posts. So there's a likelihood that those 81 people are going to see it more frequently than people who are hashtagging DIY music or Seattle musician or Seattle concert, Seattle band. Those are really broad ones that probably have a lot of aggregated content. So Seattle bands. So this is a lesson for everybody here. If you're paying attention to this, Seattle bands has 9,021 posts. Seattle Bands Rock is 37. So if you went Seattle Bands Rock and Seattle Bands band shows, and then scaled your way up to Seattle bands, Seattle concerts, Seattle musicians. If you have like a scaling tier of hashtags, you're more likely to be able to like hit an audience along the way and scale that audience.
So like,
go ahead.
Would it make sense? Like, so let's say I post 3 shows and each show has 3 artists, then to like hashtag each artist or check like if they have a hashtag, use those.
I would hashtag them either way.
Like, okay, cool.
Because hashtags don't really die. That's the whole point of like the 81 posts or whatever. So you're going to hashtag them and you're going to tag them. And I would make a statement. So let's see for this one again here. There is no post description. There are just the comments on it. So we'll get the weekend started with yada 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 yada. Yeah, and then you put the hashtags in the comments, which is actually recommended in most cases. Does anybody know why you put the hashtags in the comments?
I don't know why. I just know that people won't see them right away, so it looks a little nicer.
Yeah, it aggregates without cluttering up your post. Or after the first 30 characters is fine too, or first 30 words or so.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, everything else about the structure looks great. I was just start using the bands as hashtags and use hashtags that have a lower aggregation limit. So.
Okay. I mean, so this is great.
I think
my bands, but let's say we're like, so we have a new feature that we offer, like web pages for artists. So now we want artists to know about this one thing that we're doing, but we don't want to clutter up it in front of everybody else, right? So like, would that just be better like direct marketing? Like just send them an Instagram?
Well, do you do email lists yet?
Yeah, I guess like that's what I'm going to be starting. I have to watch that video right after this one.
Okay. Yeah. So with email marketing, and who did email marketing? Was that Patrick or somebody?
It was, I can't remember his name.
It was Alex.
Alex. Okay. Yeah. Alex. So yeah, so I would watch the email marketing one. Make sure above all things that your domain is verified. If your domain is not verified, you're not doing email marketing, you're doing spam marketing, and you're just going to end up in a spam box.
Okay.
But overall, for something like this, I'd say I wouldn't worry about cluttering this up. These people know. Do any of these people know that this is an app? I mean, do your followers?
You'd be surprised how many people have been following me and like using it, and like I meet them in person. They're like, "Oh, I didn't know it was an app," and it's like, I say it in every post. I put it, you know, like download it in like caps. I have it right in the description. Download our app. So
Can you get one of these bands to record themselves using it, and then you're doing like a cross promotion between how the app works and that it is a band that is using it?
yeah, like if they're posting like their web page or something, or like just posting a picture of their profile in the app.
I mean, post a video to Instagram of one of your bands using this app.
Like literally a video of them like holding their phone and using the app.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it convenient enough to do that?
I would say right now, like there's not a lot of content in it just because there's no shows happening right now.
Weird.
But we're also redoing our UI, so that would be like a cool like marketing thing. Like if I use one of my friends to like record them using the new thing and like tagging them in it. So
For sure. And you know, I do a lot of Caitlin and I both actually we're fans of indie music. And so we do a lot of basement shows, and a lot of these people live in those houses with those basements and still have the capability of doing shows, just they could do it virtually.
yeah, we're looking into that because technically artists and musicians that are doing online streaming now is still considered essential, which was interesting on that essential workers list. So we're going to try to do some responsibly.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's it. I'd say that keep going the way you're going, but you want to, like, you have no content that talks about, like, you say it in every post that there is an app, yes, but you're not showing it in any of the posts.
Okay.
And I don't think that there's a need to segment the market. I think the same people who would be likely to use the app are probably friends with a lot of these smaller bands and groups. It might be a good, that's your word of mouth marketing right there.
Yeah, cool. All right, I appreciate all the.
Andrew?
Yeah.
This is Tim. Can you just clarify about what you said about using smaller aggregate hashtags before trying to use higher aggregate hashtags? It's not clear to me. Is it a virality thing, or what is it that's enabling smaller aggregate hashtags earlier to be more effective? And then the other question related to that is, how do you know, where do you check to find how much aggregate, like what number of people are following a particular hashtag?
One second, I'm writing this down. So when you search on something like Instagram, when you type in a hashtag, you type hashtag and then start writing out whatever the slogan or title or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
It will automatically give you a count of how many times it's been used in posts.
Okay.
Right there on the screen. But what I mean by the aggregates of the hashtags is how many times has it been used? Because Instagram does not deliver to people based on like, oh, we feel good about you, so we're going to deliver you to 6 people. It wants to deliver you to like a 1.4% audience, or a 2% audience, or a 4% audience. So if you use a hashtag with only 10 people, you know that 2.5 people are going to see it. Maybe 3 people are going to see it. If you use one with 20, you know that about 6 people are going to see it for that hashtag. The interesting thing about that is if you post a hashtag and it has 10 people have ever posted it, and you get 4 people that like it, then it's going to show it to those other 6 people more often because they share that one common hashtag. So then it's going to try to re-deliver to that group of people. And then as it re-delivers to that group of people, the post itself has gained some authority based on that tag. Then you go up to the 100 group that's still relevant to the same audience. When you go up to that 100 group, now you have, maybe 14 people, 20 people are going to see it. After that point, 14 to 20 people interact with it. But then you've also got that lower hanging fruit of, the 4 to 6 people who are going to interact with it based on the smaller audience. So you're climbing audiences through the hashtags. And that's what hashtags are meant to do, is they're basically audience aggregators for specific things that they're interested in. They're keyword aggregators.
But if I'm using a hashtag that has been used in 1 million posts, doesn't that mean then that, similar to the idea that if it's only been used in 10, that only 2 people would see it? Would that mean that if 1 million people have posted on it, that then, 1,000 people would see it?
It might mean 1,000 people will be impressed, which means that it will try to show it to that many people. But the likelihood of your content being worthwhile in a sea of 1 million is very unlikely. So it's the idea of climbing the aggregator. So let's say one person interacted with you, now it's going to show it to 2 more. Those 2 more people, one of them interacted with you, now it's going to show you to 4 more, et cetera, et cetera.
It sounds like what you're talking about is finding hashtags that are the most closely related to your content, meaning ones that are most likely to resonate initially. So you're really trying to dial it in initially.
It depends on what your goal is. So sometimes I will post inflammatory content and tag the people that it will offend the most, because the more interactions you have, the better.
Now, hold on. The more reaction you have is better, even when they're negative. Help me understand why that's
no
better.
PR that's bad PR.
Okay, back to that. Okay. I mean, does that, does that mean that you, let's say you get lots of good, you got lots of PR, maybe it's good. What are the mechanics that kick in because you got lots of PR? Is it just word of mouth stuff that you're referring to, or are there mechanics in how the social platforms behave because of lots of volume?
So Facebook wants to deliver you content, and Facebook also knows that humans respond about 5 times more on average to negative content. So if there's a thumbs down or an angry face, there's more likelihood that it's going to get delivered to more people. It'll get delivered to the friends of those people too. It's really interesting to back to the argument.
So now you're saying, I think you're going to the next level. It's not that all PR is good PR. It's bad PR is worth 5 times more than good PR.
Yes, yeah, and if you're
at least from a volume perspective, maybe not the qualitative affinity stuff that Timothy is driving.
And there are tricks behind that too. So like I told you guys earlier about the content that I posted on one of my brands, and it's been offending large swaths of people across the globe and increased the click-through rate by like 3,000%. Not the click-through rate, the actual clicks. So the goal behind that was to drive lots of traffic to a website. It's not to make anybody happy, but what it is going to do, and it is doing right now, is it's taking every other keyword that's associated with that website and it's pushing them up the rankings, saying, hey, this page is relevant content to all these people who clicked through, and it's dragging all of those other keywords up the wall with it. It might be the target that everybody's firing at, but what they're not realizing is they're just optimizing me for Google delivery.
So rather than diving down into the weeds on how to work a particular thing, I think one of the common problems that we have with this audience is they don't know how to find their online customers. And you're very, very focused on online channels, but Sarah uses offline channels and doesn't use online channels at all. She's into newspaper and radio shows. How can Sarah find her online fisher folk?
Online fishermen?
Yeah.
I would say hashtag everything with Grundens.
Now, so let's try to find the channel that they're in. Are they Instagram users? Are they Facebook users? Are they LinkedIn users?
They're definitely Instagram users. On average, I would say. Fishermen love to take pictures out on their boats.
These are commercial fishermen, not.
Oh yeah, of course. It's beautiful out there. I used to live in a fishing village in Alaska, so I work with a lot of these people. I would say your main audience is going to be that they're very like we called them frostnicks, if that gives you any kind of like, we were all like rednecks but of the north at the time. So we very much gravitated towards the things like, we go fishing, we go hunting, we have boats, we go what they called snow machining. I don't know why they call it snow machining, snowmobiling. But you have these different things that they're very attracted to. Like, what are the sports that these people do on their free time? Where do they interact when they're not out fishing? Like, they do have lives, seldom in some cases, but a lot of them do have lives. And I wrote in here, you said, how do you approach content marketing in an industry that does not have a great social media awareness? I assume that was you. I wrote town halls. Town halls are hugely important for things like this. Like, you're talking about the direct pollution of the place where these fishermen reside, the town halls have a huge obligation because they're on the government side to keep the city clean. They know that it's a problem for both ends on the spectrum, but they can definitely offer services to these fishermen to say like, hey, maybe we'll help you pay for the recycling service, or hey, maybe the city will just pay for this recycling service outright, and then you just put it in this bin instead of putting it on the beach. The next thing is obviously publications. I'm sure you've done that, local city newspapers and such. A lot of these publications are online. So, like the Petersburg Pilot, for instance, where I used to live, everybody follows the Petersburg Pilot on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook, if they have an Instagram, Twitter, or a Facebook. So you now have an audience of people that are looking in one direction. How can you go interact with them? How can you target them, right? Like what can you do to interact with them on that level? Maybe you can contact the Petersburg Pilot and say, hey, could you post this article on your Facebook? Could you post these good fishing practices on your Facebook? But more so, you have the what's in it for me issue, right? So like you're saying they have a corporate social responsibility, but they really don't because they're not social. It's not a social company. So what is it in their eyes that they're getting from you before they go give you their fishing nets and pay you to take them? This is going to be a barrier for you for a little while. And this comes back to that first slide that I mentioned, where you have to like, kind of dismantle whatever you're doing and look at it and all the little pieces. What were you gonna say, John?
I wanted Sarah to unmute and ask you a question.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, yeah. No, that's great. That's kind of why we started really this two-sided marketplace, where now we're kind of engaging in the people that use this recycled product and trying to get them to pay for it. Because yeah, the fishermen are either it works great or they're not interested. It doesn't really provide any value to them.
Yeah, how do you bring them in?
The brands or the fishermen?
Yeah, the fishermen.
The fishermen, it's going to the docks and shaking hands and talking to them.
Hold on. So that's outbound marketing. I'm saying, how do you bring them in?
Yeah, that's what I'm asking.
Well, let's go back to my content marketing. So you have to produce content that they're going to want to see. So what is important to them? Like you have to figure, I would go interview them. I'd go ask them, like, what kind of problems do you have? This is something that John will annihilate anybody who comes in with an MVP and no customer problem. What is your customer having a problem with? Like, what can you offer to them? Can you offer them solutions? Can you write blogs about problems they're having and, optimize them for keywords that they may search online on their own and come into you and, walk through your front door and say, hey, I saw that you guys recycle fishing nets and this is kind of important to me to save the fishing industry that sustains me.
Yeah, one thing we really try and make sure to do is a ton of positive press, right? Fishermen are getting all kinds of bad images because of ghost gear and stuff. So we like really emphasize when they've done something good for the environment and make that a whole part of what's going to happen if they recycle with us.
And do you guys give them like badges or anything like that or anything?
No, I love that idea. I think we should definitely start doing that. Little award center. We give them beer and.
It's got to be for the boat.
Like
it's got to be for the boat. They want it on their boat.
On the boat, decals for the boat.
Yeah, just a little plaque on the boat. They love stuff on their boat.
Okay, that's a great idea.
I'm not sure if a lot of people understand the fishing industry. So you go get a bank loan for $200,000 to buy the boat from your dad. Basically, you're buying him out of his loan because he still owes $200,000 on it. And then you go buy your what is it? Your IFQ or PFQ. It's your fishing quotient for the year. It says that you can't even go fishing, and it's for a small window of time. And that license costs you about $60,000, and to renew it is like $60,000 every year. By the time you're done with all of this, you can kind of pay your rent and you're mostly bankrupt, and it's a downward spiral. So these people are really proud of the things that they do have. And the one major asset they typically have is their boat. So if they can put something on their boat, if they can like point at it on their boat and say, like, that's my pride and joy, and that's a sticker I got for being a badass, then they're going to love that. So just from my experience with them.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions that people want to bring up before we call it done?
Not, I guess it's like really specific. Have you tried Rand Fishkin's Spark Toro? I heard about it a while ago. I just looked it up today and I saw they have like something up.
Can you type that in the chat box?
Yeah, sure. Because I remember he was talking, like, it seemed like a very, if it works the way I heard about it way back when, that it could be like a really cool channel to find out like what fishermen are really using in a good channel to market toward them besides like Instagram or Facebook.
Yeah.
So for anything that is a commercial oriented thing, or a, B2C kind of business, I think that if you can't find a Reddit channel where somebody's complaining about that, then it doesn't exist as a marketplace yet. And so what's the equivalent of that for fishermen?
So they all share similar problems, I'd say, for that demographic. The fishing industry is collapsing, and we're just not talking about it. Really, it's one of the biggest issues that I could express. But at the same time, like, it needs to collapse so that the fish can recover. But at the same time, we eat a lot of fish, so it's it becomes this issue where we have human nature that we never solve a problem until it's a problem. I'd say that if you target the brands, so commercial fishing, you hire, the teenagers around your town or your kids to go out fishing with you. Like, you're saying commercial fishing, but it is just a family with a boat trying to go fishing, trying to make a living, trying to survive. And a lot of times you can target them by brands. I mean, we're inundated with over 3,000 brands per day. Like, I bet each of you could look down at your watch or your pants or your shoes and name a brand that's on your body right now. For that very reason, I try not to wear any brands. It just bothers me. I focus on it a lot now that I am in that world. You can focus on the brands that these people are attracted to. You can figure out what kind of breakout demographics they're interested in. So, like, go online, go to Google Trends, type in commercial fishing, and then go to the breakout groups down below. Find something interesting. Let's just do it. And while I'm doing this, I want Austin to ask me questions, because I went to school for aerospace and I'm interested in what you're doing.
So that was actually my question in the Google Doc about the not great social awareness, social media awareness. Yeah, most of the flight schools that I've talked to so far might have a Twitter that they haven't updated in 2 or 3 years, or maybe an Instagram page where a student might be uploading pictures. So I know there's good examples, and it seems like the overwhelming majority just don't really. So I know there's aviation conferences, a few big ones, but it's hard to figure out between the really big events and at least my perception of a low impact social media strategy, where exactly to focus efforts.
So can you tell me about the product?
Yeah, so designing hybrid electric airplanes for flight training. We had a discussion earlier today about whether flight training was the sole market to focus on with sort of the uncertainty in aviation right now. But targeting flight schools for either conversion of existing airplanes into hybrid electric powertrains or a brand new hybrid electric airplane.
What have your experiences been with privately owned airfields?
Airfield specifically?
Yeah, the airfield itself.
I haven't had very much discussion. Most of the contacts are flight schools who either are the primary operators at a given airport, or at least have a good working relationship with the airport or the port, depending on
have you ran up the ladder at all? Have you tried to go to companies like Boeing or Alaska Airlines and said, like, hey, we're doing this project, we're interested in maybe anything we can do alongside you? Have you guys competed in competitions for any kind of like optimization for hybrids or anything like that?
So we're still pretty early. So we haven't participated in competitions or anything like that. But yeah, definitely for, especially as more and more airlines are starting to create or at least heavily utilize aviation academies, reaching out to those companies and contacting them. That's been something that we've been working on.
Okay. Yeah, I'd have to think about that for a while, but that's, I guess let me go back to your question here real quick.
So I'm struggling a little bit with Austin's work because I think he's latched on to an audience that's not yet in the market. I think that they're not really ready to move yet. And now that we have a crisis, they're even less willing to move. And so when we look at the adoption curve, before the early adopters, there's the innovators that are the DIY people. And I wonder why Austin is not doing a content strategy around DIY projects by other people, right? Some guy's got a crappy plane in his garage and he's converting it to electric, or some high school kid is building an electric drone that he's going to ride his body on, or whatever the crazy DIY project is that intersects between small airplanes and electric motors. Or even here's the current state of what are the manufacturers of electric planes currently doing. And I know Horizon is currently testing an electric plane. And so articles about that then become discussions about the DIY space and where the market is not yet, but will be. And then you can reach out to all the other demographics of where the early adopters might show up in the market, which are probably not flight schools.
Yeah, I think flight schools are going to be, I'm not sure what the connection would be there, to be honest. I think John is right along the DIY lines and along the early innovator lines. Maybe creating a social space for them or connecting with them in social space, places like Reddit, or I work with a couple different pilots. I actually used to work for Alaska Airlines. There is a group of people within Alaska Airlines that are all pilots, and they're all like, it's like a buddy club. And I'm not talking about commercial pilots. I'm talking about like, Cessnas and little planes.
Sure.
And these group of people are totally into the idea of like innovating their own aircrafts. Like they feel invincible because they fly these things all the time. They're not so much worried about the dangers of tinkering with the engines and stuff. I think, give me one second here.
Yeah, so I recently joined the EAA, Experimental Aircraft Association. So I'm not saying that that's not an avenue that you can go down. It's just the requirements for an electric airplane get pretty challenging for recreational purposes.
Yeah, I'd say you have a good market in places like Alaska. Like I had a friend a couple of years ago who on takeoff his system ingested ice and blew the engine, and he was dead on landing. But the problem with these is that you can ingest ice, right? Like, does an electric motor ingest ice?
Yeah.
So
yeah, but
you
the
could write
batteries
articles-
don't work worth a darn in sub-zero weather.
Yeah, you can write articles about that type of stuff. You could produce content that directly correlates with people's feelings and their emotions about, how an electric plane is better or more efficient than a gas-powered plane. Or these are hybrid. In this case, they probably still use gasoline, I assume.
They could, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I don't know. I would say you're going to want to explore options like thinking outside of the box, like, develop that customer persona, like who so far has expressed interest in this idea. Can you map that person out? Can you tell me what kind of boots they wear? Can you describe their fleece jacket? Can you, it's really important to put together that persona first. And then once you have that, I think you'll get a better idea of like where they hang out or what they do.
So for me, I find that people who are expressing interest and people who are really customers are really two different groups of people. And so that's why I press on this issue of making an offer that requires a commitment as a filter to filter out the interested but non-customer. So these cheerleaders are not really helpful at this stage. And so where's the person that has a real problem that's willing to spend money to solve his problem? And how can you do that now? And that could be selling a book, selling a workshop, selling some plans, all kinds of different things that could be sold that are not the final production engine that does what it's doing.
Yeah, that's definitely where I am. And oddly enough, most of the conversations, or the conversation I had with Patrick earlier this morning, kind of led me down that, I guess, understanding that I need to think about those more, going beyond the feasibility analysis, like figuring out, is this actually a viable product in the future? Could any of those intermediate steps be
Where are you
useful?
marketing?
What's that?
Where are you marketing?
Right now, nowhere. I have Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook groups or profiles, but one post as of yesterday.
And then what about Instagram?
No Instagram account.
I'd definitely do an Instagram account. The DIY plane is a pretty decent hashtag, like 1,800 posts or something like that.
Yeah, and I know that there's a lot of Ab Geek on Instagram as well.
I would call anyone who posts an image hashtagged DIY airplane. Like, what is this? Flight test. Pull them up. Flight test, educate, innovate, inspire the world of flight. Partnerships at flighttest.com. So you could, sounds like they have partnership opportunities. Check out our store, etc. They build a lot of drones. It looks like some life-size glider replicas, which are really cool, bombers and stuff. I think that things like this would be a good opportunity for you to reach out and interact with people. I'm not going to say your only opportunity, but I definitely think it's a valuable one. There are tons of people here just with their own planes, or who it looks like this guy owns a hangar or something. I don't know that flight schools are going to be super active online. That's definitely a statement to be made, but I don't know that you're going after the flight schools. Are you going after the people who attend the flight schools, maybe?
Well, primarily it's been the owners or even certified flight instructors. That's been my primary, I guess, point of contact.
I mean, I guess like I guess going back to this, if people maybe don't have a big social media presence, if something like SparkTour does work, it may show you like, oh, like they read this blog, or they follow this website, or like they listen to this podcast. And maybe those are people that you could try to reach out to. I'm guessing it'd be harder to reach out to like maybe somebody who does a podcast, but if there's like a blog, maybe some of those people to like direct them over your way, or reach out to you.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah, another system like that is BuzzSumo. People post really odd things on Instagram sometimes. Anyways, yeah, I think that you have an audience pretty much anywhere you look. You just have to figure out who that audience is in the different places too. And this is something somebody mentioned, segmented customer. Oh, Danny, you had mentioned segmented customer markets earlier. I think that it's okay to develop a persona for like a combined persona for one platform, like what you're doing. But it's also okay to have different personas for different platforms. Like you're not going to be talking to the same users on Reddit as you are going to be talking to on Instagram. Like, Reddit's typically very information based. Like you're going to find a lot of a DIY community. People want to talk directly about what's going on. And on Facebook, you're going to find groups of people who want to discuss their different projects. And on Instagram, you're going to find pictures of pictures people take of their projects who don't really care about the interaction or the DIY aspect as much of it. And when you build your own website, you're going to find the people who are looking for solutions or problems that they can solve. Typically, it's solution, but that's one option you might have, is to produce content around what these people are experiencing these issues in their system structure.
I guess at this point, I'd like to sort of wrap it up and see if there's any next steps that people have in their marketing that they'd like us to arrange a workshop around. If you would post into the chat any questions you have that you'd like to have a workshop put together. Next week, Patrick's going to talk about finding the right customer psychographic, pivoting to the people that matter. And then the week after that, we'll talk a little bit more about social media and the process of driving social media. Any last thoughts before we call it done?
Thank you. I really appreciate you guys organizing this. This is Tim.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah,
Yeah.
That was good. Thanks. Bye.
I heard a lot.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. So we'll see you next week with open coffee in the morning and discussion at noon around the process of doing psychographic analysis of your target customers.
Yeah, and I'll post my email in the discussion here, so if anybody wants to get in contact, they can.
Can you also post a link to your slides?
Yeah, yeah.